The flickering fluorescent lights in Rosie's diner hummed that same tired tune they always did, like the place itself was sighing through another long afternoon. I was behind the counter, wiping it down for what felt like the 100th time that shift. It was 2:47 on a Wednesday, that strange dead zone between lunch and dinner when time seems to crawl. The only people who usually came in were truckers trying to stretch out their coffee or old folks making a slice of pie last an hour just to have someone to talk to. I'd been working at Rosie's for 3 years now, tucking away every dollar I could for nursing school. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. The pay was decent, the regulars were kind, and best of all, the place felt safe. At least, it used to. The bell over the front door jingled, snapping me out of my rhythm. I glanced up, and that's when I saw them. 3 men stepped inside, moving with a kind of swagger that set off every alarm in my head. Their shoulders rolled back like they owned the room, eyes sweeping across every corner like they were sizing it up. Each one wore a leather jacket, not the kind that comes from years on the road, but the kind that looks expensive and wrong somehow, like they were trying too hard. The one in front caught my eye first. Tall, lean, with a spiderweb tattoo creeping up the side of his neck. The 2 behind him stuck close, one built like a bulldozer, with a thick neck, the other skinny and twitchy, with a face that reminded me of a ferret. "Sit wherever you like," I said, keeping my tone light and professional even though I could already feel that knot of unease tightening in my stomach. They slid into a corner booth, the one that gave a clean view of both exits. Guys like that always seemed to care about knowing their way out. I gave them a minute to settle before walking over with my best customer service smile and a few menus. "What can I get you fellas today?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. The one with the spiderweb tattoo gave me a slow look up and down that made my skin crawl. "Coffee, black, and make it fresh. None of that burnt crap," he said. "Of course," I replied, jotting it down on my pad. "Anything else?" "Yeah," the ferret-faced one sneered. "Make it quick. We got places to be." I nodded and turned toward the coffee station, relieved to have a reason to step away. But before I could take 2 steps, Spiderweb's voice cut through the quiet. "Hey, you deaf or something? I said fresh coffee." "That pot looks like it's been sitting there since yesterday." I glanced at the pot. It had been brewed maybe 20 minutes ago. Still, I kept my voice calm. "This batch is fresh, sir, but I can make a new one if you'd like." He leaned back in the booth, his tone turning cold. "You arguing with me?" The diner went dead silent. The old man in the corner stopped rustling his newspaper. Even Miguel, our cook, froze behind the pass window, spatula in hand. "No, sir," I said evenly. "I'll make a fresh pot right now." I'd dealt with jerks before, rude truckers, drunk college kids, all kinds. But something about this guy was different. He wasn't just looking to complain. He wanted control. I turned to go, but suddenly he was standing right in front of me. He must have been 6 inches taller, easy, and he used every bit of it to tower over me. "You know what your problem is, sweetheart?" he said, leaning in close enough that I could smell the stale smoke on his breath. "You got an attitude. Think you're better than us?" "I don't think that at all," I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. "I'm just trying to do my job." He laughed, a harsh, grating sound like gravel in a blender. "Your job is to do what I tell you, when I tell you. Now apologize." "Sir, if I offended you, I'm sorry. Let me just get that coffee started." He smirked. "Not good enough? Before I could take another breath, his hand shot out and clamped around my wrist, hard enough to make me wince. "Get on your knees and apologize properly," he said, his voice low but sharp enough to cut through the air. Everything inside the diner froze. It was like time itself held its breath. Miguel started to move from behind the counter, but the thick-necked guy was already on his feet, one hand dipping inside his jacket, a silent warning to stay put. I can't do that," I stammered, trying to pull my wrist free. "Please, just let me go." "Make me," Spiderweb hissed. What happened next felt like slow motion. I tried twisting away, but he yanked me back so hard I stumbled into their table. Before I could steady myself, his hand came across my face, a sharp, vicious slap that sent my head snapping to the side. The sting hit first, then the tears. The sound of it cracked through the diner like a gunshot. "That's what happens to people who don't show respect," he said, letting go of my wrist. I stood there, one hand pressed to my burning cheek, too stunned to move. My heart was racing so fast it hurt. The old man in the corner had gotten to his feet, his face pale as paper. Miguel had stepped out from the kitchen, still gripping his spatula, torn between stepping in and not wanting to get himself killed. And then the bell above the door chimed. That little jingle cut through the tension like a blade. Every head turned. 5 bikers walked in. They weren't the kind of weekend riders you see at gas stations with spotless Harleys and shiny leather. These men looked like the road itself had carved them from asphalt and wind. Their vests were weathered, patched up, and real. Heavy boots hit the floor with dull thuds. Their faces were lined, sunburned, and hard in the way that only comes from years of riding through storms. The man in front was a mountain, easily 6'4", with a gray-streaked beard that fell to his chest and arms thick as oak trunks. His vest said Iron Saints across the back, with President stitched beneath his name, Bear. The group stopped just inside the doorway, scanning the room like men who'd seen trouble in 100 different forms. Their eyes moved from my red cheek to Spiderweb's posture, to the dead silence choking the diner. Bear's expression didn't change much, but his eyes went cold, hard as winter steel. "We interrupting something?" he asked, his voice low but heavy enough to fill the whole room. Spiderweb turned toward him, and for half a second I saw it. That flicker of doubt in his eyes before the fake confidence came roaring back. "Private conversation," he said. "Keep moving, old man." I winced inside. That was a mistake. Bear's eyebrows lifted just slightly, not angry, just curious, like he couldn't quite believe what he'd just heard. He glanced over at his brothers, and in that quick exchange of looks, something silent passed between them, the kind of wordless understanding that only comes from years of riding side by side through every kind of hell. Then Bear looked back at Spiderweb and gave a slow smile. It wasn't friendly. It was the kind of smile that made your stomach drop because you knew it meant trouble. "See, here's the thing," Bear began, taking a step forward as the rest of his crew spread out behind him. "We're regulars here. Been stopping at Rosie's every Wednesday for, 5 years now?" He nodded toward me. "And Sarah here. She's always treated us right. Good coffee, good food, better attitude than we deserve half the time. Never once complained when we tracked half the highway across her clean floor." He stopped about 10 feet away from Spiderweb, close enough that his sheer size made the younger man look smaller than he'd probably ever felt in his life. "So, When I walk in and see her with tears in her eyes and a red handprint on her face, and you standing there looking proud of yourself, Bear said, voice still calm but colder now, well, that don't sit right with me. This ain't your business, the thick-necked one grunted, his hand still resting inside his jacket. One of Bear's men, a lean Native American guy with flint-colored eyes, spoke up, his tone quiet but sharp. Son, I'd move that hand real slow away from whatever you think you're grabbing, nice and easy. The air got heavy, thick with tension. You could almost taste the electricity in it. Spiderweb was doing the math. I could see it in his face. 3 of them, 5 bikers. The odds weren't in his favor. The Iron Saints might have been older, but they had that dangerous stillness about them, the kind that comes from men who've been in more fights than you've had birthdays. We don't want any trouble, Spiderweb said finally, his voice losing its earlier bite. Just having a little disagreement with the waitress. Disagreement? Bear repeated, his tone steady, his words carrying more weight than any shout ever could. That what you call putting your hands on a woman half your size? He took another step forward. Where I come from, that's got another name. We call that being a coward. Spiderweb's face turned red, his jaw tightening as if he might actually try something. Watch your mouth, old man, he growled. Bear didn't flinch. He just tilted his head slightly, almost amused. Or what? He asked. You gonna hit me too? Go on then. I'm right here. Let's see how tough you are when the odds are even. The challenge hung in the air like thunder waiting to break. Spiderweb clenched his fists, but he didn't step forward. You could see the war going on inside him. Pride versus fear, and fear was starting to win. His 2 buddies had gone completely still, their bravado draining away like water down a cracked sink. That's what I thought, Bear said finally. He turned to me then, and his voice softened just enough to sound human again. You okay, darling? I nodded, though my throat was too tight to speak. Miguel! Bear called toward the kitchen without taking his eyes off the thugs. Yeah? Miguel's voice came back, shaky but steady enough. You called the cops yet? Already on the phone with them now, Miguel said, holding up his cell. Spiderweb's eyes went wide. You can't do that. We didn't do nothing. One of the other bikers, an older guy with silver hair and a long scar down his cheek, turned toward him. You laid your hands on that young lady. That's battery, son. Might even be intimidation, too, the way you were talking. It was just a slap, the ferret-faced one blurted, his voice cracking. Bear turned his gaze on him, and when he spoke again, his voice dropped to something low and dangerous. Just a slap, huh? Let me tell you something about just a slap. My daughter's about Sarah's age. She's working her way through college, just like her. And if I ever found out that some punk laid hands on her the way you did— He paused, leaning in slightly. There wouldn't be enough of him left for the cops to arrest. You get what I'm saying? The room went so quiet you could hear the hum of the lights again. And the thing about Bear's words, they weren't shouted, they weren't bluster, they were a promise. Spiderweb looked toward the door like he was thinking about bolting, but Bear's men had already positioned themselves in a loose wall between the booth and the exit. There was no way out. Sit down, Bear said simply. It wasn't a request. Slowly, like men waking from a bad dream, all 3 sat back down in the booth. The thick-necked one finally pulled his hand out of his jacket and laid both palms flat on the table in surrender. Bear nodded once, satisfied, then turned back to me. "Sarah, why don't you come stand over here with us until the police show up, yeah?" My legs felt like jelly, but I made my way around the counter to where the bikers stood. One of them, a younger guy with kind eyes and a patch that read "Rookie," quietly handed me a clean napkin for my tears. "Thank you," I whispered. "Nothing to thank us for," Rookie said gently. "Just doing what's right." The next few minutes felt like hours. The three men sat there staring at the table, their earlier arrogance gone. Every so often, one of them would sneak a glance at the bikers, but none of the Iron Saints moved. They just stood there, quiet and steady, like a wall you couldn't get through. Bear pulled up a chair nearby, not crowding me, just close enough that I could feel a sense of safety again. "You been working here long?" he asked, his voice easy, like he was trying to help me settle my nerves. 3 years, I managed to say, "saving up for nursing school." "Nursing, huh?" Bear smiled a little. "That's noble work. My ex-wife was a nurse. Toughest woman I ever met. Takes real heart to care for people when they're at their worst." "That's kind of why I want to do it," I said quietly. "To help people." He nodded. "Well, you've been helping folks every Wednesday with a smile and a good cup of coffee. That counts for something, too." The sound of sirens in the distance broke through the thick silence. A few minutes later, 2 patrol officers stepped inside. They took one look around at my red cheek, the 3 men sitting frozen in the booth, and the bikers standing guard, and they understood right away what kind of scene this was. Bear and his brother stepped back, but didn't leave. Each of them gave a calm, detailed statement about what they'd seen. Spiderweb tried to spin it. "It was a misunderstanding," he said. "She got hysterical, that's all." But the bright red mark on my face told a different story. And when Miguel mentioned the security camera above the register, you could practically hear the air leave Spiderweb's lungs. The cops asked Miguel to pull the footage, and within a minute, they'd seen enough. The 3 men went quiet, the kind of quiet that comes when reality finally catches up to you. They were cuffed and walked out to the waiting cruisers. Spiderweb shot me one last venomous glare over his shoulder, but Bear stepped right into his line of sight, blocking him completely. The message was clear. You'll have to go through me first. When the doors shut behind them and the flashing lights faded down a highway, the diner seemed to exhale. I sank into a booth, shaking so hard I could barely hold the glass of water Miguel set in front of me. Bear slid into the seat across from me, his massive frame filling the space like a mountain that had wandered indoors. "First time something like that's happened?" he asked gently. I nodded. Words didn't want to come. "Won't be the last," he said after a moment, his tone calm, not cruel. "World's full of folks who think being mean makes them powerful. They're wrong, of course. Real power's knowing you could hurt someone and choosing not to. It's standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves." I looked at him through tear-blurred eyes. "Like you did today." Bear gave a half shrug, looking down at the table. "We've all been on the wrong side of things at one time or another," he said. "The Iron Saints. We're just trying to do better now. Make things right where we can." He paused, his expression softening. "Somebody's got to look out for the good people in this world." "Why?" I asked after a quiet moment. "Why'd you help me? You don't even know me." Bear smiled a little, that deep, tired kind of smile that comes from someone who's seen too much but still chooses to care. "Don't need to know you to know right from wrong," he said, "and we've been coming here long enough to know you're one of the good ones. You treat everyone the same, whether they're ordering steak or stretching a cup of coffee for 2 hours, that matters." Before I could say anything, another biker, the silver-haired one with the scar, walked up to the table. "We should hit the road, Bear. We're already running late for the VA hospital visit." "VA hospital?" I asked. Rookie, the younger one, smiled. "Yeah, we go every Wednesday. Spend some time with the vets, the ones who don't get many visitors. Bring magazines, play cards, just hang out. Nothing fancy, just letting them know somebody still cares." Something in my chest twisted. My eyes stung again, but for a different reason this time. "You're all veterans?" "Some of us," Bear said. "Others just believe in taking care of those who served. It's our way of giving back." He reached into his worn leather wallet and pulled out a crisp $100 bill, setting it on the table. "For the coffee we never got to drink, and for your trouble." "I can't take that," I said immediately, shaking my head. "It's too much." "It ain't enough," Bear replied, firm but kind, "and I wasn't asking. Take it. Put it toward that nursing school of yours. Think of it as an investment in somebody who's going to help a whole lot of people." He stood up then, ready to go. Something inside me didn't want to let the moment end. "Wait," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Can I hug you? Is that weird?" Bear's face broke into a genuine grin, the kind that reached his eyes. "Not weird at all, darling." I wrapped my arms around him, and it felt like hugging a mountain, solid, unmovable, and somehow safe. For the first time since the nightmare began, I could finally breathe. When I stepped back, I looked at each of them in turn. "Thank you," I said softly. "All of you. I don't even want to think about what would have happened if you hadn't walked in." "We'll never know," Bear said with a small nod. "And that's just fine by me. You take care of yourself, Sarah." He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small card. The Iron Saints logo on one side, a phone number on the other. "If anyone ever gives you trouble again, you call this number. We take care of our own." "But I'm not," I started. "You are now," Rookie said, grinning wide. "Anyone who slings coffee for the Iron Saints is family. That's the rule." They left in a thunder of engines that rattled the windows. The sound didn't scare me anymore. It comforted me. I stood by the window and watched as the Iron Saints rolled out onto the highway, their bikes rumbling like distant thunder, until the sound faded into the open road. Miguel came up beside me, still holding his trusty spatula like it was a weapon he'd forgotten to put down. "You know what's funny?" he said. "When those guys first started coming here, I was scared of them. Thought they were trouble. And now?" I asked quietly. He smiled, shaking his head. "Now I know the truth. Sometimes the people who look the scariest on the outside are the kindest on the inside. And sometimes the real monsters wear nice clothes and friendly smiles." He reached out and squeezed my shoulder. "You did good today, mija. Kept your head. Stayed professional even when that pendejo was way out of line." "I was terrified," I admitted. Miguel nodded. "Courage ain't about not being scared. It's about being scared and still doing the right thing anyway. You got that, Sarah." I looked down at the $100 bill still sitting on the table, then at the Iron Saints card in my hand. The paper felt heavier than it should have, like it carried more than just ink. I thought about Bear's daughter, about the veterans they visited every week, about how 5 strangers on motorcycles had turned the worst moment of my life into proof that there was still goodness left in the world. The bell above the door jingled again, and I jumped before realizing it was just Mrs. Patterson, the retired teacher who always came in on Wednesdays for her slice of lemon meringue pie and Earl Grey tea. "Hello, dear," she said with a warm smile. "You look like you've had quite the afternoon." I touched my cheek, the red mark already fading. "You could say that, Mrs. Patterson, but I'm okay now." I slipped Bear's business card into my pocket, feeling it there like a lucky charm. For the first time all day, I actually meant it when I smiled. Because that was the truth. I was okay, more than okay. I'd been reminded that for every cruel person in the world, there were still those who chose kindness. For every coward who preyed on the weak, there were protectors who stepped in, men like Bear and his crew, who showed up exactly when they were needed most. I grabbed my order pad and headed over to Mrs. Patterson's table, my steps a little lighter this time. The world could be harsh, sure, but it could also be beautiful, and I knew which part of it I wanted to help build. Later that night, after I closed up the diner, I went home and filled out my nursing school application. I framed Bear's business card and hung it above my desk, a small reminder of the kind of person I wanted to be. Someone who stood up for others, someone who chose compassion over cruelty, someone who made the world a little safer just by showing up. And every Wednesday after that, the Iron Saints kept their tradition. They'd roll into Rosie's diner for coffee and pie, and I always made sure to save them the corner booth, because family deserves the best seat in the house.